We're not here to talk about hypothetical assaults. We're here to talk about the hypothetical paradigms and ideas around masculinity, because you started this conversation saying that patriarchy and capitalism and all this bullshit. And I'm sitting here saying to you, saying to you, live in a very soft society. You're completely correct. 99%
incorrect.
You live in a soft society. If you were the same person in most places on the planet, you would have had your ass beat because you are a weakling. And weaklings are not respected. Let me tell you something, my friend, I'll let you talk afterwards. Never in human history, in any single civilization, in any single empire across the history of Earth, have men been celebrated for their weakness. Ever once. It doesn't matter if you were an Aztec or the Mao dynasty, from China all the way to South America. In every single history book you can read, men who were respected and men who had stories written about them were written about them because they were strong. Weak men have never been respected. Weak men have never mattered. For you to come along and say, I think it's okay to be weak, is fine. That is your initiative. That is your decision. But the reason you have done that is because you lack brave. You lack forms of strength are important. You're saying that. Yes, it is. Physical strength is just as important as emotional strength.
Emotional strength is actually more powerful than physical strength. Because the fact of the matter, no matter how physically strong you are, somebody bigger could come along and beat your ass. But it's emotional strength that helps you survive the ass beating.
You're right.
You're
right. I know what? You're right. That's a good point. You're saying, so when someone comes along to assault you, you won't call the police afterwards and you won't fight back. You'll lay in a ball, you'll get an ass kicking, but you're emotionally strong enough to just deal with the fact that you got an ass whoop in front of everyone. And that's fine. And everyone should be like you. And that, you know what we call,
I'm not saying
people like you are called in most places in the world. People like you are called in most places in the world. They're called victims. We're called prey.
Studs.
We're a prey.
We're called studs.
And let me tell you something. When I inspire men to grow up and be their biggest, strongest version of themselves, emotionally, mentally, physically, in every single realm, that is not a negative thing. There's nothing wrong with a man being big and strong. And let me tell you one more thing. We're sitting here talking to professional video game players. You're a professional Fortnite player yourself.
I am.
Okay. I'm not saying that just because someone's strong that they don't have to be mentally adept. I'm not saying that somebody doesn't have to be emotionally adept just because they're strong. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that physical strength is also an important thing. Strength does matter. The difference is in the real hard to achieve, and because it's hard to obtain, it's the ostrich problem. You don't want to accept that it's hard to do. You don't want to go through the pain to get it, so you want to pretend it doesn't matter. Just because you don't want to go through the bullshit it requires to be a physically dangerous individual does not mean physical dangerous individuals are not respected by society. And I'll tell you one more thing. One more thing. Right. If me and you were to stand side by side in front of 100 women, in front of 100 fucking police officers, 100 fucking enemies who want to kill us, whatever it is, they would all choose to fuck with you before they choose to fuck with me. Because they'd look at me and I have a certain status and a certain presence which comes from my physical stature. Not just because of my capability, but because of the things I've gone through to become this physical specimen of man. They know I'm not the kind of guy who you really want to mess with. They look at you and go, he is a victim. Because that's what you look like, my friend, and it's your own choice.
See, that's just it, though. The only reason they would choose you in that element is because of the patriarchal fucking male-dominated society that we
fucking go. Here we go.
Here's the deal, Andrew.
This is fun. No. I'm not done. Name
Andrew, listen to me.
From history that wasn't patriarchal. Name a society from history that was not patriarchal. I'll tell you why, my friend. I'll tell you why we cannot name a single society in history across the entire planet that was not patriarchal. Because patriarchal societies are optimized to survive. When things get difficult, when people are put in survival situations, we naturally revert to our gender roles. I'll tell you something. If we were all on a ship and the ship got shipwrecked, the men would start building and digging and hunting, and the women would start gathering and doing what women are naturally adept at. Because when it comes down to survival, you have to do what you are most competent at. And men are more competent at certain things, and females are more competent at certain things. I'm not saying
not all men. Not all men, and not all females.
My point is, patriarchal societies are more competitive than any other type of society because society functions better as a patriarchy. So the reason you cannot name a single society in history that was not a patriarchy is because all of the societies, and I'm sure there were some, which were not patriarchal, were destroyed by patriarchal societies. They were wiped off the face of the planet because they are not competitive.
There haven't been any yet.
Books to read. They do not have monuments to find. And the point I'm making is that in the harsh reality of ultra competitiveness, only patriarchal societies can survive. So the reason you cannot name one from history is because all the ones that tried this idea that you're trying to purport were destroyed in real time. And in the West, in America, as we stand right now in America, which I wouldn't even call it a patriarchal society because it isn't, because females have more rights under the law than men.
Oh my God, bro.
They do. And I'm telling you now,
are so clueless.
As America falls apart and the patriarchy is disintegrated, all that's going to happen is that other countries like Russia, like China, like countries which are still patriarchal, will remain more competitive than the West, and you're not going to fix the world. America's just going to end up a third world shithole. So throwing the fucking patriarchy away is going to fix a fucking thing. You live in a clown world, my clown world.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I do live in a clown world because there are people like you that are sitting there like pushing this inane philosophy. So yeah, I get it. Right? That's coming from your own trauma, your own unhealed trauma.
Firstly, the fact you think that you're talking to marginalized people more than me, it doesn't even make sense, because I'm talking to groups of people, you're talking to groups of people, and both of them includes marginalized communities. Secondly, the fact that I am actually mixed race, that I grew up in the south side of Chicago with my father.
Absolutely.
I know more about marginalized communities than you do, because you are as white as they fucking come, and you're sitting here talking about to a marginalized person.
Absolutely. But let me ask you,
I never woke up and thought I'm brown, so I had to find this white guy with pink hair to fight for me. I woke up and fought for myself. And that is the point. You don't want to fight for yourself. You fight for yourself when you're a man. That requires all forms of power, whether it be emotional, mental, and physical. You to sit here telling men they should be as weak as possible and sitting around doing fucking nothing is not good for society as a whole. And there's nothing wrong with patriarchal society.
I'm not advocating for weakness, but like I'm advocating for people to heal and to heal their trauma.
I think that all men, if you're a good man, you're going to have a traumatic life. That's part of being a man. And I think
I think it's not even a part of being a man. It's a part of being a human being on the planet. Okay. You're going to have a traumatic life. Sure. Right? But you got to heal the trauma. The trauma doesn't make you unless you heal it. If you don't heal it, you go around, say, dumping it on women. Right? By waltzing around talking about how you got to protect women.
It depends how you heal the trauma, right? And when I said that being a trauma is part of being a good man, you said it's part of being a human. I agree. But I think you can be a very, very good woman with a good heart, and you can be a good person. You don't need a traumatic life to be a good woman. However, to be a good man, you need to have a traumatic life, because any man who's not had... I'll tell you why. Let me answer. Any man who's not had difficulty, any man who's not gone through something that's difficult is not very good at being a man, because when shit hits the fan, people turn to the nearest man in the room and say, what is the solution? Someone just broke in the house, you go to the man. Fucking there's a natural disaster, a hurricane, you go to the man. There's a war, you go to the men. So men who have not been through trauma are not very good at being men, because they're not capable of dealing with trauma.
Wait, pause right there though, Andrew, because you said when you go to war, you go to the men, but the only reason you have a war is because of men and their lack of awareness about their own feelings. That's why war exists in the first place.
So you're saying
if you had more women leaders, we wouldn't even have war.
Okay, so
if we had more women leaders, we wouldn't even have war. Men literally are responsible for war by a lack of emotional awareness. That's how it starts.
Interesting. So let's make this the final point before we move on. You just said that if all the leaders were women, we wouldn't even have war. The fact that you hate your own gender so much is quite amazing to me. But actually,
I don't hate my own gender.
Another point.
See, why do you
point? Let me tell you why you're wrong.
No.
The reason you're totally wrong saying that the world would have less war if there was no female leaders is because if you actually ask anybody who's been in the corporate world for long enough, the companies that have the most arguments, the most difficult corporate structures to deal with, in fact, even if you ask most women, they say, I don't like having a woman boss. I'd rather work for a man. When you have a whole bunch of women in charge, it's nothing but a fucking bitch fest, and it's a shit show. Every single fucking person who's ever worked in corporate knows that. Every single person who's ever worked in the world knows that women actually, as beautiful as they are, and they're good at lots of different things, they would they would prefer to work for a male boss because it's a stronger, more clear leadership structure. Having a bunch of women in charge of countries is not going to make a fucking peaceful world. And the fact you believe that shows your entire mental model's fucked.
Dude,